So when I heard the Mackie DRM series at the NAMM show, I was rather impressed and surprised. I hadn't really given Mackie much of a thought since the early 2000s when they owned RCF and EAW, and everybody seemed to have Mackie speakers back then. But there was something different about that DRM series. It looked different. It sounded different. Mackie was making a statement with this, and so the business side of me wanted to know why. Well, minimal effort led me to do a Google search, and it didn't take long to find out that Mackie had been sold in late 2017 and had essentially, at that point then, sold off all their other brands and was focusing only on themselves. Oh yeah, the DRM series was different because Mackie was not the same company. I was happy with my QSCs and all the speakers I had, so I didn't really consider changing anything. So Mackie wasn't afraid. They decided to send me a pair of their SRM 212 V-Class speakers to go head-to-head against QSC in the K.2 series. I've been using QSC for 10 years, and it was time to see if Mackie was on par. I took these to a venue that I'm at frequently. I do it about 30 times a year, and I've only ever used the QSC, either Legacy K series or the K.2 series there. I know the crowd sizes, I know the acoustics, I know how it's going to sound, I know what I have to EQ, I know certain songs that require certain amounts of EQ in them, so it was a pretty good test to know exactly where Mackie is on par with where the QSCs are. So first let's talk about the SRM V-Class on its own. 2000 watt peak power amp, just like the K.2, 1800 watts to the low driver, just like the K.2, and 200 watts to the high driver. The K.2 I think is 225 watts peak to the high driver. It has dual pull mounts on it, just like a K.2. It weighs just over 40 pounds, the K.2 is 39. The frequency response is 42 to 20,000 hertz, almost identical to the K.2. It has built-in delay, 8-inch stereo jack, 2 inputs on the back, high Z input for instruments like a K.2. Very similar DSPs, although they've added indoor and outdoor settings, which the K.2 does not have. And most importantly, this comes with a 6-year warranty. You'll hear me say that again later because it's awesome and it's something that's important. 6-year warranty with the SRM V-Class. It comes with too short of a power cord. The handle on the top is a weird flat handle that I don't think is very comfortable. I love that the K.2 does have studio monitor DSP on it, which is great if you want to use it inside, especially in a studio setting. It kind of doubles that way, which is a neat little touch. And the connectors for this on the back of the speaker are at the top, not at the bottom where the QSCs are. Probably something I've just gotten too used to over the years, which is why I found it weird that the connectors were at the top where I know they are on so many other speakers. It's a little bit larger than a K12. It has a 90-degree dispersion and not a 75 like the K12 has. It has 135 dB max SPL, which puts it up in EV/ETX territory. The K.2 is 132 for, again, whatever those numbers are worth. But I will say, side by side, when I tested them at the same level, same volume, same everything, it did seem like the Mackie was a little bit louder. It has handles on each side. The LEDs can change colors. And the advanced impulse DSP and their custom designed horn they have here is supposed to make the mid-range on this a little bit smoother and sound a little more natural. And I will tell you, listening to those same tracks at that same venue, I think it absolutely does sound a little bit more full and a little bit more natural. It definitely required me to do less EQing to get the sound I wanted out of it than I'm used to with the K.2. Mackie says these are the best speakers they've ever made. And well, I used them for over 2 months. They probably are. So let's get into it. You can always switch out the power cable because once I put it open over a sub, there just wasn't a long enough cable, as you'll see, to really plug into anything. I needed it to be about 2 feet longer. So every time you turn the speaker on, you're going to need to push this button in to get it to go and have you be able to scroll through. You have each of your channels independently. As you click on them, you can adjust their levels here. I just leave all of mine at unity. You can adjust any of your channels. Below each channel is an EQ, and in the EQ you can actually go up or down
which is not a feature everybody lets you do. So Mackie actually gives you complete control to EQ in any direction you want, high, middle, or low. You have the same control for each channel. We were just on the mixer setting. If we now go to the speaker mode, you will notice this is where you're going to get your DSPs. So you can run it flat, which is always a good place to start anytime you get a new speaker, just to see how your music and your equipment responds to it. Where you need to go from there is up to you. Live generally is for bands. That's a great setting if you're actually doing live bands. Speech for presentations or big conferences. If you're mostly going to be just doing voices through the speaker only, it's a good DSP to start with there as well. Obviously, a lot of wedding DJs, nightclub DJs, party DJs, there's club mode. So even if you're using an external subwoofer, club mode is designed to give you a little more pop in the high and low end for your dance type of music. And then monitor mode if you're using it as a stage monitor. This is not a studio monitor like you'd see on the QSC K12 series. This is for a stage monitor. So you need to know what you're doing when you set that, because it's definitely going to change the sound of the speaker as it's trying to resist feedback. Mackie has also incorporated a DSP called outside and inside.
The way Mackie explains this in their manual is that when speakers are outside, a combination of low and high frequencies don't build up the way they do inside. So the V-Class corrects for that by boosting the frequency range that becomes deficient, so the speaker sounds the same outside as when it's inside. Basically, you tell the speaker where you're at and they'll do the rest, and that's all they want you to know. I've used it outside and it sounds awesome, so I'm assuming it's working.
So moving on, you've got your typical subwoofer settings here. You can have it off. You've got these Mackie subs here that you can set your low frequency crossover to. I have a variable crossover set for 80 Hertz. I'm using it with my RCFs right now. Typical stuff in the low frequency crossover. They now have delay here as well. This is something that you'll also find in the QSC. If you're using speakers in a system that requires delay, you'll be happy to know that you can do that with these as well. Bluetooth is where things definitely get different, because this is not something that you'll find on a K12.2. It is something that you'll find on an SRM 212. So you can actually stream directly to the speaker, which is great, especially if you're just using it for home parties or having some people over. I use these exclusively at weddings and corporate events, so I'm not really interested in streaming to them, but I do like that there is the app that comes with them where I can monitor the system, adjust volumes if necessary, change the front lights. If I wanted to change the speaker settings from maybe speech to club to live, all without having to actually get to the speakers. So that's the thing I like about the Bluetooth. Other than that, you can use it however you want. It sets up typical way. There's your connect mode if you want to actually link more than one speaker together. Line and mic for channel 1, line and high Z if you're looking to do an instrument there, which I've used many times, which is great. Front LED can be on, off, or used just for your signal. Pretty typical setting. Your LED color can be Mackie green, or they've also added white, which is great. I use that at weddings. Multi is where it scrolls through all three, kind of like an in-store display. The LCD screen can be set for high, dimmer, or off. You can set a 4-digit code lock to restrict access to your speaker as well, if you don't want anybody messing with it and it's not near you. This is also where you'll find your advanced Bluetooth settings, auto connections on or off, auto links, secondary, primary, or off, depending on which speaker this is in your Bluetooth link. Down here at the bottom tells you your model, what the firmware is, your current DSP, and the internal temperature of the speaker. That's just your typical settings on the back side, with your 2 inputs, 2 outputs. You have a mix out, which will mix all 3 of the inputs to out. You've got your auxiliary jack there. The knobs feel good. First 2 channels do lock at unity there. They just feel good. They feel well made. All the connections are good and strong. Like I was mentioning earlier, the speaker itself feels really good. Feels like it's been very well constructed. So here's a quick look at the 12-inch driver with this flashlight. You can see that hidden behind that nice grill there. And one of the ways the Mackie keeps itself cool is these big, huge ports on the bottom, which help disperse heat away from the amplifier. And again, I may not love the top handle, but I do like the dual side handles. The QSC only gives you one side handle. This is really helpful when you're taking the speaker off like I am here off a subwoofer. Makes it really easy to pop it right down. Your Mackie's never going to let you forget what you're using. SRM 212 V-Class, SRM V-Class, SRM V-Class, and of course on that front grille, SRM V-Class. Also at night, that display, the full color display, really easy to see when you're behind. So final impressions after using them for 2 months at 12 different weddings. I was very skeptical when I first got them. I wasn't really sure. I was curious and I was optimistic, but I wasn't sure if they were up to the challenge or not. And they were more than up to the challenge. They sounded outstanding. Knowing the venue as well as I do, and having only used QSC there, so knowing how it, in my mind anyways, should sound, the Mackie sounded fantastic. They were just as clear, just as loud, if not louder. They required less EQing on my end and filled the entire venue beautifully, whether it was during toasts or during dance time. Absolutely fantastic job that these speakers did. They've got a 6-year warranty, just like the QSCs do. So if they're as durable and reliable as I'm hoping they will be, these are going to be amazing speakers for the next many years that I use them. Just awesome. Great job by everybody at Mackie who put these through and developed these. They sound great. They're right on par. They are absolutely something that you should consider if you're in that price range. There's a couple of quirks that I mentioned, but as far as the sound quality, they sounded amazing. Thanks again for watching. Hope you got a lot out of this. I know it was kind of long, but I also wanted to put a lot of detail in there. Click like and subscribe. See you next time. I don't like sound test videos, but I made one for these anyways. So you can check that video out as the Mackies go head-to-head against the QSC, looking at the different DSP modes.